Any
John?
thoughts, John?
No. I had a smart ass comment I was going to use, but I can't use it because of the way I like the idea, the way Will wrapped up. So we edit all this out.
Oh, Lord.
Get ready to ride along for another exciting episode of No Driving Gloves, where Derek, John, and Will use over 75 years combined industry knowledge to bring you a bare-knuckled view on the collector car hobby. So let's get rolling. Well, we're back again for another episode of No Driving Gloves, and everybody's home and in their studios, and we're going to visit a little bit about what actually happened while everybody was gone and how our weeks went. We've all had reasonably exciting weeks, depending who you are. So, Will, Derek, are you happy to be home and kind of rested up from your travels and excursions and traffic dilemmas?
Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Luckily, I don't really have anything else planned until SEMA, so get to enjoy a month or so home and try to get some work done. And SEMA kind of starts the new year for us, so looking forward to getting the new year started.
I'm still running on brass era fumes, so I'm doing good. Glad to be home, but miss being around the brass era cars and the horseless carriage stuff. But just gives me more desire to finish up my projects here at home so I can play with them. How'd your weekend go, John?
It was there like most weekends. I got to spend the weekend watching girls volleyball. A kid plays volleyball. Let's see here. Trying to remember what I did on Friday. What?
It was
what an exciting. Yeah, say what an exciting.
It was a good day if you forgot what you did.
You're
Isn't
right.
that what they say?
What an exciting week, I guess. I'm trying to remember here because I think the problem is I recorded with Will. That's it. I hung out with Leadfoot Lulu on Friday because I recorded with Will on Saturday, and I think I recorded with you on Friday. So my weekend had already begun by the time I talked to you guys as your weekend was beginning. And on Monday, I had a guy stop by and kind of asked for me at work and just drop my name. And being the nice guy I am, I finally got to meet Nate Adams with Chassy Media. He's business partners with Adam Carolla, and they've put out some of the best true car documentaries that I've ever seen. It's a interesting company that they've done and developed. And we criticize some of the History Channel footage that was out and the Leno footage and that. And Adam and Leno are pretty good friends, I guess, listening to his podcast, CarCast, and things like that. But in talking to Nate, they've put out the movies Winning, The Racing Life of Paul Newman, which we've shown at the museum, where they put out the movie 24-Hour Wars, which is a documentary on the development of the Ford GT40 in the 60s and how Ford went after Ferrari, and really does an excellent history on Ford and on Ferrari. They have interviews in there with the chairman of Ferrari that it's unbelievable that they ever pulled those off. Nate was telling me it took him like 2 years to arrange the sit down with the guy at Ferrari, and it's just a fabulous movie. We've also shown that. Their next release will be on Willie T. Ribbs, which is a very prominent African American, the sports car driver, attributes Paul Newman for his success in racing. And then they seem to be buying up older documentaries and all the footage that's included with them, re-editing, re-narrating them, and re-releasing them, and making the movies that they should have been done with a pretty big budget. So it was really fascinating to hang out with him on Monday and a couple of his production crew. They're in Birmingham filming a movie right now. And just to spend some time with him. We'll go ahead and I'll put some links up on our webpage at nodrivinggloves.com in case you wanted to pick up one of the 24-Hour War or something from Chassy through Amazon. Those are documentaries that are definite. If you are at all car-wise, they're worth watching. that really made my week, is being able to spend 2 or 3 hours with, again, Nate Adams. And it was just, we developed a couple of ideas for some business relationships in the future. That's kind of encompassed my weekend.
Boy, that went from I can't remember what I did to 4 minutes of wow.
Hey, I'm an all or nothing kind of guy.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is around here on No Driving Gloves. We
That's
forget
right.
things, and then suddenly we remember a 10-minute story.
You pull the choke out, warm me up, and all of a sudden, and then I'll go balls to the wall. So,
Oh Lord.
so go
Well,
ahead
I-
now, top me now.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I had that exciting of a weekend as, meeting or hanging out with a person that has that strong of connections and that amazing of a resume behind them for their movie work and all of that wonderful stuff that Nate has, but did get to spend the weekend with a lot of early cars, which is always fun for me. I think, as we talked about on last week's podcast, that the weekend was spent Thursday on a brass and gas era tour. And for anybody that doesn't know what that is, those are tours for brass era cars that still have only acetylene and oil lamps. So acetylene headlights and oil lanterns for the side markers and the tail light. However, safety features are added. There are typically LED stop tail lights to make sure people on the roads can see that you're stopping. So we do add safety to these things. And then from there, I traveled up to Henry Ford Museum, Greenfield Village, for the Old Car Festival. Friday, spent the day getting the replica of the 1886 Benz patent Motorwagen running, which we've talked about many times on this show. I did grab some good GoPro footage of the engine running and driving it around a little bit, so we'll probably get that up on the Facebook page and our website and all those good places we have. And I've got some footage of some of the other cars running around that hopefully we can get up there as well so everybody can see it. But I spent the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, hanging out in the tent that Henry Ford Museum puts up and brings out some cars and invites special cars to be displayed in. So the 1886 Benz is always in that tent, along with the operational replica of Henry Ford's quadricycle from 1896. It's one of the most authentic replicas that were built by a gentleman named George DeAngelis, who was a Ford engineer, actually, for a very long time. We also had the operational replica of Sweepstakes, which is Henry Ford's first race car he built in 1901, prior to Ford Motor Company even existing. Ford built those back in the 2001 for the 100th anniversary of Ford Racing. Of course, they consider their 100th anniversary of racing to be 1901 rather than 1903, when the company, of course, officially starts. So they built the replica for that event, and they still operate it to this day, which is fantastic. I used to drive the car occasionally when I worked at Henry Ford Museum, and it is quite a piece of machinery. It can basically spin the rear wheels going into high gear, which it has a 2-speed planetary transmission, but still, anything with enough power at that time to spin the rear wheels going into high gear, it's quite a machine. And then they also had a couple Lincolns out because we were celebrating the 100th anniversary of what basically would become Lincoln Motor Car Company. And they actually had a car from my past there, from my time at the Crawford Auto Aviation Museum, which was the 1921 Lincoln 7-passenger touring car that is actually serial number 21, which happens to be the oldest surviving Lincoln still in existence. Of course, at that time being built by Henry Leland. We actually, at my time at the Crawford, I actually got that car back up and running with the volunteer crew because it had a seized engine. So it was good to see the car, visit again, and see it out running again. So that was kind of my weekend. Did I top the amount of time that John spent talking?
I was about the same.
Oh, man.
I will add, if when you do get those videos to me so we can get them posted, We actually do have a YouTube channel right now. We just released the podcast on it, so you get to watch our logo for the 60 wonderful minutes spending with us. But we can also add those videos to YouTube and get those out that way. And
There you
Fantastic. Come on, Will, let us know. How was LS Fest? You came up to Bowling Green. I wasn't here to visit you. Let's hear it.
go. All right. Well, first off, I'm going to start off by Tuesday. Monday was a holiday, so.
oh, you're going to tell us about your new toy?
Yeah, I mean, heck, that was part of the week, right?
Yeah.
So Monday was a holiday, so we took that day off. Didn't come into the shop. Just kind of had a long weekend. Tuesday came in and worked, and Kyle Kirkman, my head fabricator in the shop, we took off Tuesday night at midnight and drove to St. Louis, Missouri, and picked us up a new power hammer. So that's how my week kind of started, was driving to St. Louis on Tuesday night late. We got there about 9 o'clock in the morning, loaded our hammer up, and took a quick tour of Mittler Brothers, which is a fantastic facility. Met a buddy of mine for lunch that I hadn't seen in several years. Drove back home, and then we got back Wednesday night about 11:30 or so. So we had a pretty long day Wednesday.
Now fill everybody in on what a power hammer is before we get into Thursday.
All right. Well, a power hammer is basically for metal shaping purposes. They were built during World War II, I think. Was mainly when they were used. They would have them on aircraft carriers and whatnot, pounding out, pieces of aircraft that got damaged or whatever. And so they kind of migrated into the automotive industry as well. And it's one of those pieces of equipment that if you're going to be making fenders and roof skins and door skins and stuff like that, instead of using a pull mac style hammer, which is technically a nibbler is what they're considered, the power hammer just hits a lot harder. You can put shape in a panel very, very fast. You can do reverse compound curves, like really cool transmission tunnels. You can put them in a slip roll and get get the curve that you want, and then linear stretch the edges and just really do some really creative stuff with it. So basically all it is just this big piece of equipment that pounds metal really, really hard. You can change out the dies. It's pretty much for stretching or shrinking sheet metal, and that's pretty much all it does. But it's really kind of a luxury item in a hot rod shop. Not every hot rod shop has one, like they have bead rollers. Every hot rod shop has a bead roller, but not all hot rod shops have a power hammer. So,
and it really takes a talented individual to operate that, because me and a power hammer, I can take a perfectly good piece of sheet metal and give you recycled metal, or to be recycled metal, in a matter of moments.
It don't take long to take it too far. It's almost a lost art. Luckily, it's kind of making a comeback. A lot of these younger shops that are specializing in sheet metal fabrication and building these one-off parts out of sheet metal have kind of recreated the luxury of having a Yoder or a power hammer or a Pettingale style hammer in your shop. Guys, Ray, not Ray, I don't know, I can't remember the guy's name, but anyway, he has a class that you can take on Faye Butler. That's the guy's name. Faye Butler has where you can take a class from him on how to use a power hammer, and a lot of young guys have taken that class and really just kind of started taking that to the next level. So really excited to have one in the shop now. It's just going to make our production level go up and our range of being able to build stuff go up as well. So real excited to have a power hammer in the shop. So that was Wednesday. When we got Wednesday, we got the hammer. Thursday came in, unloaded it, positioned it in the shop. Got the 65 Ford truck with an LS motor in it, cleaned up and ready to go to Bowling Green for LSFest. Got to Bowling Green, and I tell you, man, LSFest is it's one of those shows that personally I wouldn't have to go to every year, but man, it's a pretty awesome event. It's a lot more race and performance oriented show, where normally what we do is more of kind of sit behind your car, talk to people and polish your car and just kind of sit there and not really do a whole lot. Where LS Fest is, there's always drag racing going on. There's always autocross racing going on. They even have a drift event there, speed stops challenge. I mean, they got stuff like that going on for 3 days, and it was a cool place to be. I'm glad I went, and I'll definitely go back, but it's not going to be an every year event for me, especially being that it's the same weekend as Shades of the Past. So,
And you said there was literally everything. You showed up in a Ford, and recapping a little bit of last week's episode, if in case anybody missed it, you said there were import cars. I know I posted a picture of a 350Z that you had sent me on our Instagram page, I guess in a drifting event. But you said it was all makes and models. Just the only common line is they were all powered by that LS motor under the hood, correct?
that's it. I mean, it can be anything with, as long as it's got an LS motor in it. You're welcome at LS Fest. And I mean, there were Datsuns, there were Nissans, Mustangs, Ford trucks. I mean, you name it, it was there. The Pantera that the Ring brothers built, that I think Prestone owns now, was there. Anything from street rods to brand new Corvettes, and they were there, and most of them were there racing in one way or another. Another cool thing that kind of happened this past weekend was I met Scotty D there, and he had me media passes. I actually took all of the still photography for ScottyDTV.com, and been able to be right behind the wall when drag racing's going on, and not having to sit in the bleachers, and being out in the middle of the drift course or the autocross course, or sitting up in the tower with I actually met the owner of the track, Dallas. None of that wouldn't have happened if I would have just been a normal spectator. So that was really pretty exciting. It's my first experience at a drift event, and I was one of 4 crazy dudes that had the cojones big enough to go down in the middle of the drift course and take pictures. So a car basically skidding out of control, but under control, 10 yards from you, smoking the tires, running 120 mile an hour. That's a pretty big rush. And you don't realize how close they are because you got the camera in your face. So it's very deceiving of how close they really are. Scotty was showing me some of the video that he was taking, and I was like, holy cow, I was that close to them cars. And he was like, dude, you're right on them. So that was pretty exciting there.
And that camera lens really plays tricks with you, and you all of a sudden you pull the camera down, and you're right there in the headlights.
Yeah. And they're pointed right at you, going sideways, and but I never did really get nervous. One of the guys that I was talking to out there shot a lot of drifting events, and he told me, he's like, dude, all these drivers out here, they're good. He said, watch them 2 or 3 laps, and you'll kind of see their pattern, and you'll figure out real quick where you can go and where you can't go. So that's what I did. I just kind of stayed back, watched them make a few laps, and then got up there pretty close, and got some really good photography for Scotty D, and we'll be able to share some of those on our Instagram and Facebook page and website, hopefully.
Sounds like your show had a lot of excitement, and Old Car Festival can get exciting too. They've got car games that get played there. Might not be as exciting as drifting, I guess, or drag racing, but there are activities where the early cars race each other. They throw in a few little antics along the way where maybe you have to do a Chinese fire drill or make sure you pop certain balloons along the course. Do things like balance your car on the old style balance beams. Might not be quite as exciting as what you got to do, Will, but it's still pretty fun.
Man, I bet it was fun. I mean, what you went to was history, and what I went to was making history, So I like both of those. One day I'm going to skip LS Fest, and I'm going to skip Shades, and I'm going to go to Old Car Festival with you one day. I don't know when,
Heck yeah.
but one day it will happen. Because that's what I went to college for. We went to college for restoration. It wasn't, tuning LS motors or putting them in a Ford truck or drag racing or anything like that. It was, it was the history of an automobile, of the automobile, and that still interests me, and I know it interests John as well. Maybe that's what we need to do in a couple of years: is just all three get together and go up there and do the podcast live or something from there. That'd be kind of neat.
Well, I don't know if we're going to get traveling in this year, but I hope to be able to get us together at a couple of events, probably Bowling Green a couple of times, it seems, but since nothing happens in Alabama, and get us together and do some of these events. And hopefully, as our listenership increases, we gain some credibility and you won't have to rely on those Scotty D media passes, and no driving gloves can put us up for those.
Wait. You expect the three of us to be credible?
At least me and John. I don't know about you, Derek.
He just plays those plastic cars.
Yep. And I wouldn't say there aren't cool things in Alabama. I mean, you've got some cool stuff that goes on down there at the Barber. I think it'd be cool to meet up come down to the historic races you guys do or something like that. I think we could do a show out of that.
Unfortunately, it'd be like doing something at the Corvette Museum. I have to work when we have those events.
So we do it after. We'll do it after hours. Will and I'll hang out and have fun while you work, and then we'll get together and report on the fun we had.
We'll hang out at a bar somewhere and have Diet Cokes and invite the listeners over for a party.
I'm down with that.
There you go.
Let's do it. We need to have it at the cigar bar so we can have cigars.
That's what the podcast is for.
I don't smoke in my studio.
Too bad. That's what all this foam's here for, is absorbing those wonderful odors. So since we're talking about shows and things and activities, there was some news really just today. Again, we're recording this on the 14th, and Goodguys officially announced, it hit Hemmings today, and it might be a couple days old today, but they've expanded their, I guess, accepted vehicle list. Now we'll take cars up until 1987, so really a 30-year rule. Will, what do you know about that? Is that going to be a rolling 30-year rule, or are they just jumping from 15 years from 72 to 87? Or
yeah, from what I understand, they're just jumping from 72 to 87, and it'll stay 87. I don't know. I mean, for several years, I'm sure. They've been hitting around about it pretty much all year. There's an article, I believe it's in their yearbook. If you register a car at a Goodguys event, you get the Goodguys yearbook, which is a really awesome book. They take a lot of time putting it together, but it's kind of a recap of all year last year and then some upcoming things for this year. And they've hinted around a little bit on their Facebook page a couple of times. And so I kind of figured that it was coming. So as far as I know, it's just they're jumping to 87, and it'll be that way for a while.
you think it's I guess Derek, you jump in too. I think it's a cool thing. I mean, you get a lot of resistance, like with the AACA and that, when you point out that caravans all of a sudden are classified as antique automobiles, and now, heck, even Eagle Talons and Fox Body Mustangs can be again in the AACA because they're more than the 30-year age limit. Do you think that Goodguys rolling that, it's going to add literally thousands of cars that are potential candidates, and a whole new realm? Because I can see 84 CRXs into this, and like I said, caravans, and all of a sudden you open up to square body Chevys, which we've talked in our trucks episode. Some of the hottest trucks on the market right now are those square bodied Chevys, and now all of a sudden they have a whole new venue they can be built for. Is this good for the industry, or
Good for the industry is a interesting question, or a good question. I think I'm going to go on. It's a very good for the hobby, because I think what we all have to remember, and the three of us come from different worlds of this hobby. It's all the same hobby, but there's definitely different niches. I'm an early car guy. John, you're the Lotus guy, British race car kind of end of things. Will, you're doing hot rods. And one of the big things that a lot of us talk about, and I think a lot of us hear about, is that, well, these kids these days, they just don't appreciate the old cars. Well, we have to remember that old cars to them are different than what old cars are to us. Okay. Yes, most of us, the three of us that are on this show, were born in the 70s and 80s. So to us, 1980s vehicles are not old vehicles. They're just a used vehicle we remember from our childhood. But to some of the kids that are getting into the car hobby right now, that 1984 square body Chevy pickup, or whatever cars out there from that era that they're starting to work on and play with, that is the car that's going to get them into this hobby and bring them into this world. And if we don't start moving these shows cutoff dates up, that's what's going to stop kids from getting interested in the old car hobby, or in the car hobby in general, because they're not going to get to go to the shows, meet people, hang out with them, talk to them. And that's their opportunity to learn about other cars and other vehicles that they haven't been exposed to in their childhood, or in the world they're running around in. So I think it's only the sensible thing to do to bring these cutoff dates up, so we can keep this hobby going and keep people interested in it. Because it doesn't matter how much we want to live in our past and think that we're still the young kids of the car hobby. The cars from for me, the teens, 20s, 30s, whatever. For other people, the 50s, 60s are the old cars. Well, we got to accept that the cars that were around when we were kids are old cars now too. And it's just, we have to change with the times.
Yeah, I see both sides of it. I see, the side where it's cool to just have 1972 and older vehicles, heck, 1948 and older vehicles, all in one place at one time. There's just a cool air about that. Being that I make my living in this industry, it just opens up the door for even more vehicles for me to build. Goodguys gives you something to build a car for. Going to a show, winning an award, being in a magazine, you're there where a lot of things are happening, and it brings in people from all over the country. So that guy that in the back of his mind, man, I really like Fox Body Mustangs, but why would I build one? There's really not a purpose unless I want to go drag race, but I really want a really nice put together hot rod. Well, now there's a reason for that. Let's do it. So, I see both sides of it, and there's going to be shows out there that are 48 and older or 72 and older, that if that's your thing and you can't see past, you don't want your 32 Ford being parked next to a Fox Body Mustang, then that's your prerogative. But personally, I can pretty much find one thing I like about every car ever built. So I don't mind looking at vehicles that I've really never just stood and looked at before. And that gives me an opportunity to do that, because there's going to be cars that come up to Good Guys events that I've never really paid that much attention to. And it may spark an interest for something else I'm building at the shop or for one of my personal projects. You never know. So personally, I think it's a good thing. I like it. I do kind of see both sides of the situation here.
But I think you're right, Will, which is there will always be shows that will retain the year limits of the older cars. So Old Car Festival, where I was, 1932 and earlier, they have to be the way they would have come from factory. There's no hot rods, no street rods allowed, anything like that. And then Greenfield Village Henry Ford Museum also hosts on Father's Day weekend what they call Motor Muster, which is 1933 to 1976 automobiles. They upped the cutoff date on that probably about 5 or 6 years ago. They moved it from 72 to 76 to include some more of the classic cars that people were starting to collect and get involved with. And I think that those shows, like you say, those are shows that guys that own those cars, ladies that own those cars. There's a lot of women that come to those shows. I'm not trying to leave women out of this at all. There are a lot of people that come into those shows because, like you say, Will, they want to be with cars like theirs. They don't want to bring their 1908 Franklin and park next to a 1989 fox-bodied Mustang, whatever it is. And that's cool. That's the prerogative of that owner. I still think, going back, like you say, it's good for your industry because now you have reason to build other cars and do other things. And I think that again kind of plays into what I was what I was mentioning about getting people involved in the hobby. These young kids that are growing up now, like you say, maybe they think the Fox Body Mustang is this really cool car that, was out before they were born. So it's an old car and they want to get it and hop it up, just make it a really cool car. Now they have the chance to do that. Where before, was there, as you say, was there the reason to do it? And I think that's what this is giving people an opportunity. It's giving them, like you say, the reason to play with some of these cars and do things to them.
When you're talking the ages, it still amazes me, and I still think 45 is young, but we're sitting here in 2017. The people graduating high school this year were born in 2000. So a Fox Body Mustang is 10 years, 8 years older than they are. You're right. We've got to look at kind of the demographic of where the market's moving. I know there's a lot of people, and even on our Facebook page and the chatter about this Good Guys move, there's a couple people excited. There's a couple people that are, I want to say, upset about it just based on the reactions. And I stole the article or shared the article from Hemmings, and if you read through their comments, there's a lot of people that are upset about it. Not to alienate anybody, all three of us, I think, are in this and are doing this podcast to help encourage the youth to get involved. And the only way to get the youth involved is to allow them something they can relate to. And we discussed this in our episode when we talked about car values a little bit, and dollars and cents, is that the only way those cars that, say, 1972 and older are going to maintain value and be preserved and kept alive in this hobby, especially with today's teenagers, where really a cell phone is almost their idea of a car. How, what app can you get? What case can you get? Which phone do you have? That seems to be the status quo, not what did you drive to school today. So we need to do things that get the kids involved. And once they get involved, they mature, as we said, in dollars and cents. They buy their their dream car of the past, a Fox Body Mustang seems to be the standard, or their an 82 or excuse me a 92 Camaro, or just things like that they relate to, or a Japanese car, a 86 Supra, and it's something that they see as an old car. But once they get that done, as they get older and they get the income, they mature and they start buying the stuff from the 60s, and then they go back to the 50s and so on. It's the natural progression if you look at the collector car hobby since its inception. And I kind of look at car collecting beginning in the 30s. I know it existed before that, and it took off more after World War II, where you started to have older cars. People started to buy stuff from the teens and the 20s. That was your only choices for collector cars. And then as those people's kids grew up, they collected things from the 40s and then went back. And it needs to be done. We have to encourage children to do this. I've never been shy about the fact that I kind of started hot rodding Hondas. I did the mini trucks, built mini trucks, low riders, and why do you do that? And then I did hot rod Hondas and motor swaps to Hondas and such. The older people, I'd show up at car shows in my CRX and you'd be snubbed because it's wrong. And, it's 1950s music and I want to listen to 9 Inch Nails. And when the car shows that cater to that, those are the people I hung out with. And now here I am at 45 and I have an appreciation for everything from, we talk about the collector car hobby. We seem to really refer back to that 1886 Benz. I have an appreciation from the first car ever created to literally the latest things off the line today. And I don't know if that passion would be in me if I would have listened to the older folks at the car shows when I was 18 and 19 and just finally, took my ball and went home and got out of the car hobby. It's just something I firmly believe that this is a good move for the hobby in general. And we have shows that will cater to designated areas and be able to allow similar groups and similar interests to get together. But the only way those groups are going to exist is to get more people into the hobby, or that stuff pre-40s will begin to fade away.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that, John, because you talked a lot about, and we've talked about it in the past, the three of us and a lot of car collectors and people that are in the hobby, this comes from our parents. For us, it came from our dads. You talk about, the generations. The people in 30s collected cars from the 10s and 20s. And at that time, they were just used cars, really. I mean, you didn't have the antique cars yet because cars weren't that old. And then as time progresses, of course, the kids collect the 40s era cars and so on and so forth and so on and so forth. And it's just like you said with rock and roll music. The kids want to listen to rock and roll. The parents were just griping and complaining that kids wanted to listen to this new rock and roll. Had I listened to my dad, or had my dad kind of forced his opinions upon me, I don't know how things would have turned out, because as we've talked about in the past, the first car I really dove into deep and restored really for myself to drive in high school was that 1974 Pontiac GTO we talked about. Yes, I'd worked on a whole other bunch of other cars with Dad. We had the 37 Ford that we were in process of restoring things, but the one that I really dug into was the 74, because I had seen it at the GM dealership he was working at the time, parked out in the back lot, and I thought it was just a cool looking car. I asked him about it, and he said, "Oh, that's one of the mechanics. I know him. It's his kind of daily driver." And I mean, it was in okay condition, but it wasn't beautiful. It was just a good daily driver type car. My dad proceeded to complain about the 1974 Pontiac GTO because he had started at GM dealerships in about 1970-71. He remembered when they were brand new cars and everyone hated them. He hated them. He hated working on them. He just kind of progressed into complaining about this car and how it's not a great car and this. But I persisted that I like the car. I like the way it looks. I think it's a cool car. Like it's just cool. We kind of dropped the conversation. And it was about a week later when he came home and threw a set of keys at me and basically said, "Here you go." and he had bought the GTO and we were going to fix it up for me to drive. So he was able to get past his opinions because he saw me getting into the hobby and working on cars with him as long as I had, all of a sudden really excited about one car. And even if it was a car that at that time didn't fit certain shows, it wouldn't have fit Motor Muster at that time, I was still interested in doing it and building it, even though it wasn't that old of a car. And that car led me into everything I've done since then, getting involved in the car hobby, going to school, learning museum studies, digging into Henry Ford Museum, working on all the cars there, starting to collect the cars I have, and now I'm an early car guy. But it's all because of that 1974 Pontiac GTO and my dad not pressing his opinions upon me about what that car was.
Something that I think that might come from Goodguys opening it up, and this may be fetching a little bit, but I can see the aftermarket even growing more, and the years that OEM's not making parts anymore, but the aftermarket's not supporting it yet, and it may even grow some businesses and companies around 72 to 87 cars. There's just, there's nothing really out there for them. There's no bolt-ons. There's no custom gauge panels or consoles or a different grill or something like that. And, it may spawn something that may take off to just help support it even more. So that may be far-fetching a little bit, but I could definitely see that happening.
I don't think it's that far fetched, Will. I mean, it's the way everything goes. All, everything that progresses through time, we always find ways to improve it, ways to modify it, ways to enhance it. I think it's just the natural progression of everything. As we go through time limit or that portion of history develops. If the market's savvy, obviously they know people are going to want to start restoring these cars or modifying these cars. So they're going to start making the aftermarket replacement parts to restore them. They're going to start making the aftermarket add-ons, pieces to customize it and do the things you want to do to it. So I don't really think it's that far-fetched. I mean, I think it will allow the industry to grow into those markets. That's not a bad thing. That's just what needs to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure in the 1960s, they weren't thinking that there was going to be a market someday for 1950s restoration parts. So, we just have to accept that there's going to be a market for 1980s restoration parts, and hopefully they include some, new knees and elbows and joints for us as we get older.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, one of the first things that you want to do to your car, in my opinion, is to make it faster and make it stop better. Along with making it look good, it still has to operate. So I can really see whether it's Willwood brakes or Bear brakes or stainless steel brakes or somebody out there starting Rocky Mountains, whatever,
Yeah.
starting to make bolt-on brake kits and tubular A-arms and suspension kits for these cars. And in return, what that's going to do, they're like, well, okay, now that Goodguys accepts these cars, we can go vend at a Goodguys event. So that's just going to help Goodguys out in their vending and even just bringing people through the gate, whether they have a car or not, to look at, this new company that's vending at a Goodguys event. Let's go check out their stuff and see if they've got something for me. NSRA opened theirs up to a rolling 30, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, something like that. And I wouldn't say that NSRA has grown through the roof because of that. I'm not going to say it killed them because of that. But like at Louisville at the Street Rod Nationals, that show's really not got any bigger. NSRA and Goodguys are two totally different, really, elements here. NSRA went from 1948 and older only to a rolling 30, and that I'm not going to. It made a lot of people mad when they did that. I thought it was a good thing. And yeah, like I said, it didn't set the world on fire when they done it. But to me, it's cool walking out of a building and seeing a Maverick go by, or a early '80s Malibu. I like those cars. I think they're kind of neat and cool, and seeing them rolling around square body trucks, and so I like the idea of it opening up.
We seem to have discussed this thoroughly, and I think we're all in agreement that for the longevity of the hobby, potentially the financial health of the hobby, we all agree with the Goodguys move, as Will started to allude to the rolling 30 years. And when I first asked Will 20 minutes ago about would it be a rolling rule 30 years, and then he brought it up at the end after listening to our conversations, I don't know if I like the idea of the rolling 30, because all of a sudden then people are always building for that next year and that next year. I think it's nice to have the limitations, and in another 15 years we can add another 15 years to Goodguys, whoever makes those decisions.
I agree with you, John, on that. I think
Yeah.
I think you need to have a year. I'm not a big fan of the rolling 30. I mean, I get it, I understand it, but I think there needs to be a cutoff year.
Well, if we go back to you and I visited and over the summer, and like you said, this rule's been rumored, and you've got an idea for a next project based on if that rule came about, which now it has. So now that project you have in mind is very valid. But if it's a rolling rule, all of a sudden they go, well, it's going to take me 2.5 years to do the build, so I'm not going to build a 1987 car. I'm going to build a 1990 car so that when the year 2000 rolls around here in 2.5 years, the car you roll out is the latest and greatest 1990 Buick Roadmaster station wagon. Yeah, I like the cutoff, now that we get to that, and maybe that'll appease some of the listeners that go, no, we can't move this 15 years. No, I definitely like this is the rules, this is the way it's going to be, and you don't know when we're going to change it again.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. I think, the periodic updates to the cutoff year, but I'm also not a big fan of the rolling 30. Same reasons, just keep a cutoff year and up it, every 10, 15 years, whatever the decision is. But yeah, the rolling 30 just, I think, like you say, it opens it up to too much of a mess.
So now that we've talked that one to death, what else do we have going on? Is there any things on the horizons? Did you guys buy any new toys other than, I don't think I can do an Amazon link to a power hammer for Will.
I just got to know, Will, did you guys at the shop name it MC?
No, we actually named it the Little Pecker.
We're going to have to edit that.
Why? It's a hammer, a little pecker hammer, We're going next time my pinstriping buddy comes over, we're going to have him pinstripe it on the side of it, little pecker.
In order to save some face here, you're going to have a little Woody Woodpecker on the side of it too.
Yeah, exactly. There'll be a little woodpecker on the side of it or something like that, just so people will understand what we're talking about.
Some sort of pecker that involves wood, right?
Yeah.
That's right. So
well, unfortunately, I have not bought any new toys. I'm just trying to get all of mine fixed and restored and ready to roll and get on the road. So yeah, no new toys here. I almost have my lathe set up and ready to go again. So that'll be nice once I have that up and running, but I don't have a name for it yet. I'm sure we can come up with something on this show. So maybe that'll be the next challenge over the next few weeks, is to name Derek's lathe.
There we go. We'll do an Instagram contest. You get a sticker if you get the right name.
And speaking of stickers, our first patron, Anthony, has stepped up his donations to us per month. So I guess we're doing something right in his eyes, and we appreciate that support. So remember, we do have that Patreon going on, and somebody I discussed it in the trucks episode. Somebody I saw on Facebook today, there's a dealership in Georgia. I might have to drive over and look at it. 2-wheel drive Ford F-150, standard cab, short bed, 650 horsepower, 5-liter V8 under the hood, and lowered, custom exhaust. It's kind of a lightning for today. That 2-wheel drive sport truck that I've been asking for with better than Raptor performance. Somebody's doing it, selling it to you for under $50,000, plus all dealer incentives and factory incentives with a factory warranty.
Was it the black one?
Yeah, I think it was a black one.
So
yeah,
wait,
that's a good looking truck. That's a good looking truck.
Does that mean they're listening to the podcast, or do we have a listener? That's awesome.
Quite possibly, and I will happily take that in any color, preferably blue, so it matches the logo. Put no driving gloves and the dealer name on the side of it, and we will promote that for them. Send me an email. I'll tell you where to ship that truck.
We go a lot too, by the way. Don't we need 3? Huh? Wouldn't we need 3?
Either that, or we got to share it.
You guys have trucks.
Well, I'll sell mine. I'll trade it in. Just I'll give it to you. Oh Lord!
So I did see that one come, and that one kind of made me happy. And go, all right, somebody out there is listening. Something that's not a performance 4-wheel drive. It does need to be about 6 inches lower, though.
Agreed.
Frame ain't scraping. You've been taken.
That's right.
I guess we might go ahead and wrap it up right there. I think it's been a pretty enlightening episode. Recap some of the good events that everybody was at. I just got to meet a guy. Otherwise, I think we've hashed out the new Goodguys rule fairly well. Does anybody else have anything to add to this evening, or otherwise we'll call it a night and we'll see everybody next week?
I'm good to go.
That's all I got.
Then that's it. We'll talk to you in a week. Later.